Welcome to the Gym Show with your host, Jim. So I just tried to record a video for an introduction to my Patreon site, and it was really hard. Like, I was nervous to do that. I don't know why recording the Gym Show feels really natural, and then trying to record a video for something else is like suddenly intimidating and difficult. That was really interesting, and I didn't expect it. I'm not entirely sure what to do about that. Maybe I'll just use some clips from some of the Gym Show and put that on Patreon as my introduction, because I'll be a lot more comfortable. But I don't know. It's just it was really strange, interesting to notice that how you can become really, really comfortable with something that you do on a regular basis, and if you do a very similar thing, but it's to maybe like a different group of people. Or, I mean, it's not even a different group necessarily, right? Because anybody could watch the Gym Show. It's just a YouTube channel. So I don't know. It was just an interesting observation. But something else I wanted to talk about today was this idea of following your excitement. Specifically in that I think that terminology can be confusing, because depending on where you are in your life, following your excitement may mean getting drunk and chasing after women, or playing video games all day, or eating Doritos, right? That could really mean a lot of different things depending on where you are in your life. So I think the better terminology is to say to follow your heart, listen to your body, right, as opposed to your mind, because excitement can definitely be in your mind, absolutely, and it's not what we're talking about when we say that. And I think that the reason that can change, or there can be a difference there, is because your mind is not meant to see how to get somewhere. It's not the purpose of the brain. Okay, just stick with me here. This is going to make some sense, maybe. So we have what's called the third eye, right? The pineal gland inside of your head, right? It's like here, somewhere in here, right? And that part of your brain is like an antenna. It is a receiver for information from infinite intelligence, source, the vortex, universe, God, angels, you name it, whatever you want to call the thing, your higher self, whatever you want to call that other source of inspiration, right? It is the receiver in your brain. It's an organ in your brain for that. It receives it. That is its purpose. So what happens is you download the information into your brain, right, through the pineal gland, and then your brain is the receiver. Then it processes that, right? And what the purpose of your brain to do is to perceive. It's a perceiver. The pineal gland is a receiver, and your brain in your head is a perceiver. So it can tell what's going on, in your environment right now, like in the objective reality. That's the purpose of this brain in your head. And obviously it can look at the past, right? And it can look at what happened and make connections, right? So we do all the time. But it's your higher self that can see out into the future, right? It's the thing that determines what you should do going forward. And that's how it communicates with you. You downloads that knowledge to you, and then you feel in your heart what the next step is. This is what I've been talking about, right? Taking the next step without any expectations of how that leads to where you want to go, because your brain cannot see how it gets there. Your higher self that's downloading these steps into your brain, it's part of you. It can see the whole path. And so the metaphor people will use, or the analogy, is that you are in a valley, right? A river valley, and you can't see what's around the bend. But your higher self is up on a mountain. It can see down into that river valley. It can see where all the different paths go. So it knows that if you take this turn right here coming up, it's going to lead you to where you want to go, to that seed that you planted, earlier. If you go back to the planting seed idea, you've planted these seeds of where you want to go, these things you want to happen, but your mind cannot see how to get there. So you have to receive guidance from your higher self. You feel it in your heart and in your body, and it can feel like excitement. but not the kind of excitement that's generated here. It's a little bit different. Can feel like excitement to go and do this thing. And then you take that next step, whatever it is. And so for me, like I was talking about Patreon earlier, that next step for me right now is to go and work on my Patreon account and just set that up and see what happens. The thing yesterday was to change my LinkedIn to better capture who I am right now, right? I am now a transformational guide at Your Authentic Self. That's what I am, that's what I'm doing. So I put that on my LinkedIn page. That's what I was excited to go do, and so I did it. What does that lead to? I have no idea. I have no idea what it leads to. My higher self does. It leads to something, but I don't know. It leads to the things I want some way, somehow. It plays some role in all that. So I went and did it. Right? It's gonna help somehow, I guess. It's not gonna hurt. I don't see how it could. And so this Patreon thing is the same thing. I don't know what that's gonna lead to. You know, I had some ideas about the Yaz app and some ways to put in some options for like limited coaching slots and whatnot in there. But I found out I can do all of that as rewards within Patreon, how that works. So I'm gonna have that stuff set up now on Patreon, which also has an app, I assume, and it'll be available to people in that format. So what I want to put out there is gonna get out there in a different way than I imagined, and that's awesome. So how can you be better at receiving, I guess, is the question. Because I didn't receive, well, you're always receiving something, right? But the question is whether or not you can process it and actually understand what's coming on, because it's always being sent. You know, higher beings, higher self, source, universe, they're always sending to everybody, every human on the planet, they're always sending this guidance. And we're getting it. And if you just sit on it, it's just right sitting there, they may slow down the rate because you're not doing anything with it, you're not acting on it, so why give you more guidance if you're not going to do anything with it, right? Makes sense. I wouldn't keep advising people or coaching them if they weren't doing anything with what I was telling them to do. And your higher self is the same way. So once you start acting on that, you're going to get more. But I could not sense what was being sent to me until fairly recently. So I did a lot of internal work. I released my past stories because those things weigh you down. They're heavy. They stop you from hearing your heart and what it's trying to tell you. They stop you from feeling your intuition. Diet also plays a role. When I went to raw vegan, that really put me in touch with my heart and my intuition as well. So all these little changes you can make. I think toxicity also plays a role. So diet helps with that. Detox specifically helps with that, whether it's a water fast, just doing intermittent fasting. Those are all ways to detoxify your body. And you can, of course, do more intense things, like actually taking certain supplements. Check out the supermandiet.com if you're interested in detox options. But all of these things will help you be a better receiver and perceiver of that information. The sunlight is just the worst from your higher self. And it takes time, right? Like I didn't even think that I was creative at all for the longest time. But creativity is coming from your higher self, right? So it's because that my receiver wasn't working that well. I wasn't able to process what was coming in. That's why I didn't have creative thoughts, right? I never thought I would be able to write a blog post every day. That's crazy. I was someone that took other people's ideas and went out and implemented them. That's what I thought I was. Again, that was the story I told myself. Something else that I had to let go of and get rid of, because it was also blocking me from doing these things that I needed to do in my life and being able to really be in touch with the guidance coming into me all the time. It's always been there. It's been there my whole life. And I'm sure I heard it at times, you know, not as loudly as I do now. I was not as in touch with it. And so that's probably why I did some of the things that I did, because they were all important. They all led me to be here. It led me to do the work that I'm doing now. For instance, CLW, going to that workshop in Vegas, was absolutely me listening to my heart, and in fact following my excitement at that time about that. Even though that wasn't even a concept I understood at the time, that's what was happening. And that was kind of out of character for what I would normally do at that time. I wouldn't spend that much money on a personal development weekend, basically. That was very much out of the normal for me. But I leaned into it, followed my heart, and I wasn't even the same person after one weekend of being there. I completely changed. And since I've returned, my life has changed like 5 or 6 times over. So once you start following your heart, it just goes faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. Once you start, it becomes an unstoppable, crazy train of excitement. So think about that. The next time you feel like you should do something, hey, use the 5 second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and follow your heart and do it with no expectations of what's going to happen, and see what happens. It might be awesome. I'll see you tomorrow.